Hello everyone, and welcome to the Darkest Hour. I'm your host, Amanda Jane. There are things we expect to stay hidden in the dark. Our fears, our nightmares, the stray creaks of an old house settling. But what if some of those things don't stay hidden? What if they watch, wait, move just outside our vision? Sometimes entire families see the same things in their hallway. Sometimes it follows you, not just from room to room, but from house to house. And sometimes what you see isn't human at all. Too tall, too still, too quiet. Some call them cryptids, others call them demons, but most of us don't know what to call them. Only that once you've seen one, you never really forget. Tonight, we explore the stories of those who have come face to face with something inexplicable. Creatures that don't knock, don't speak, and don't leave. Because when something wants you, it doesn't matter where you go. So, let's get started, shall we? So all of these incidents took place in a matter of 1 week. I never fully recovered from the trauma. I still suffer from sleep paralysis and I'm too scared to sleep alone. We'd moved into this rental apartment when I was 15. Our wall clock, refrigerator, and TV would just stop working randomly, even during the day. We thought there was some sort of problem with the wiring, called the electrician. He couldn't fix it or find a problem. This one time my mom had left soup on the stove and was busy in another room. I came out of the shower to see fire coming from the gas regulator, which was unusual. Luckily, I was able to switch off the gas cylinder. The next day, our ceiling fan just fell off. None of us were in the same room, but we sensed something was wrong, but we were too scared to talk about it at the time. Same day, I was up reading after dinner. I got up to switch off the lights and turned back to see a shadow of a man in the dark. I was dumbstruck. I somehow ran through the shadow. I was so scared that I felt sick after that. I didn't just feel sick, I was. I had a fever, and I would faint if I stood up from my bed. The doctors couldn't tell what was wrong. We moved from that apartment, and I got better. I don't know if it was a ghost or what it was, but I still have trouble sleeping because of that time. Growing up, my family always felt watched. Not in the typical paranoid kid in the dark way. I mean, all of us. My dad, my siblings, even myself. We've all seen something. Or someone. A tall, dark figure that would appear at random and always vanish just as quickly. It wasn't until I got older that I started putting the pieces together, especially after something my dad once said. It's always followed your mom. And that stuck with me, because after my parents divorced, we spent less time with our mom, and none of us saw it again. My mom, though, she never talks about it. She shuts down completely when the subject comes up, tightens her jaw, looks away, changes the subject. My dad's mentioned it only a handful of times, and even then, never in detail. But I remember him telling me once that I used to talk to it when I was little. He'd hear me in my room having full conversations, and when he asked who I was talking to, I'd say, the tall man. Apparently, that was a regular occurrence. My brother had his own issues with it too. When we lived in an apartment years ago, he refused to use the bathroom at night, said he saw something standing in the corner more than once. At first, my parents thought that he was just scared of the dark, but it got to the point where he'd hold it until the morning. I remember hearing him cry once because he was too scared to go in, even with the lights on. For me, the worst moment came during what I now know as sleep paralysis. I was maybe 8. I woke up in the middle of the night, completely frozen. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, just stuck there with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling. And there it was, not standing in the corner, but pressed against the ceiling, like it was defying gravity. Its back was flat to the surface, limbs fully spread out. Its head was looking down towards me, as if it was waiting for me to notice it. It didn't move. It didn't have to. Just the sight of it, up there, watching. It was enough to burn the memory into my brain like a brand. I didn't sleep in that room again for weeks. Years later, after the divorce, I went a long time without anything strange happening. That weird pressure in the air, the feeling that something was in the room just behind you, it was gone. I figured maybe it had moved on. Maybe it had always been tied to that house or that apartment or whatever. But then it happened again. Not long ago, I was visiting my mom at my aunt's house. While walking through the house, I caught something out of the corner of my eye. There's a set of stairs off the side of the living room, and I saw something, tall and dark, walk halfway up, then stop, then turn and walk back down. The view was partially blocked by the railing, so I didn't get a clear look, but it was there. I know it was. Later that same day, my aunt mentioned that she'd seen a shadow behind her, on that same staircase, the same time of day. She said it like she was trying to laugh it off, but the look in her eyes was uneasy, like it had rattled her more than she was letting on. I don't know if it's the same thing. I don't know if it's following me, or if it ever truly left. But I can't shake the feeling that it's tied to something bigger, something connected to my mom, maybe even something older than any of us realize. She won't talk about it. My dad barely does. And as for me, I try not to think about it without much success. And even all these years later, I'll still check the ceiling sometimes when I wake up in the middle of the night, just in case. I know it sounds like a cliche, but I've never really been one to believe in cryptids or anything paranormal. That kind of stuff always felt like campfire stories or internet rabbit holes, not something real people dealt with. But all I can say is that people change, life and life views change with experience, and I guess that's what happened to me. I was living with my aunt for a while in a semi-rural area that bordered a huge patch of forests and old trails. It wasn't deep wilderness or anything, but it was isolated enough that when it got dark, it got really dark. Streetlights were few and far between, and once you hit the wooded part of the trail, you were on your own. Most people avoided it at night. I didn't have a choice. I biked that route to and from work almost every day. I'd taken the path 100 times before. I knew every twist and bend, every low-hanging branch. But one night, the trail felt wrong. It was late, close to midnight. I was on my way home from a closing shift, and as usual, I reached the point where the concrete dipped down into the denser woods. I stopped to put my earbuds in, figuring I'd listen to some music to get me through the quiet stretch. I did this often. And that's when I heard the snap of a branch just before I could. Not small, not subtle. Like something heavy had stepped right off the trail. I looked up and froze. Just a few feet ahead, barely separated from the edge of the sidewalk, stood a figure. Not a person, not an animal. Something in between. It was tall, at least 7 feet, but hunched, almost crawling. Its skin looked grayish-white and so tight against the bone it looked like it could split at any moment. It had those long, spindly limbs, fingers that ended in claws. Its eyes were huge, black, and reflective. No visible nose, just a slit where the mouth should have been. It wasn't doing anything, just staring. Before I could fully process what I was looking at and run, it screeched. The sound was sharp and high-pitched, inhuman, and in the blink of an eye it darted back into the trees with this unnatural speed, crashing into brush and leaves as it just vanished. I didn't hesitate then. I took off, pedaling as hard as I could. My ears were filled with the sound of something crashing through the woods beside me. I couldn't see it, but I could hear it, tracking me just out of sight, snapping branches, rustling leaves, keeping pace like it wanted me to know it was there, like it was trying to catch me. It wasn't close enough to be seen again, though. The trail finally opened up into the residential area, a couple of street lights, houses way off in the distance. I shot toward the nearest light and skidded to a stop underneath it. I was gasping for air. I don't think I'd ever pedaled so hard in my life. My legs were jelly. My heart was pounding so loud I literally couldn't think. And then I turned around. At the edge of the tree line, crouched low in the shadows, was the same figure. It hadn't followed me out of the woods, but it was watching, perfectly still, just watching. I didn't wait. I hopped on my bike and rode the few blocks home, threw my bike into the garage, slammed it shut, locked every door and window in my aunt's house, and didn't sleep a minute that night. A few weeks passed. I didn't see it again, so I did the natural thing of trying to convince myself that it was a hallucination, sleep deprivation, maybe some kind of animal I didn't recognize. I told myself anything that made sense even though it didn't make sense. And then one night, I looked out my bedroom window, and it was standing in the backyard, still, staring straight up at me. That was the last time I saw it. I never got an explanation, but I've always had a theory. Around the time of the first sighting, the city had started some construction on the section of a trail nearby, digging into some old drainage tunnels that ran under the forest. I think that whatever I saw lived down there. Maybe the noise, the digging, it stirred something up. Something that maybe didn't want to be disturbed. To this day, I don't use that trail. I don't even like walking near the woods at night. And even now, years later, I still find myself glancing at the trees. I'm half expecting to see those weird eyes, watching. But I never do see them. My purpose behind sharing this is not to depress anyone, so don't go getting all sad right off the bat. Actually, no, this is how we're going to do it. I'll tell you the end of my story first, and then we'll go back to the beginning. On my 11th birthday, my Aunt Becky and Uncle Ted adopted me at a California courthouse, brought me to Montana where I grew up healthy, happy, and not holding any baggage into my 30s. The end. Now, from the top. I was watching the Kids' Choice Awards on Nickelodeon. Amanda Bynes is on stage accepting an award. The place I called home was a sweltering hot trailer. The air conditioning never worked as long as I could remember. I always used to fiddle with the knobs and smack the side of the metal box, thinking maybe this one time and this one combination of turns and taps will work. I'd sit there for hours tinkering with it, like it was a video game cheat code that would energize it back to life again. But I was never really that good at Nintendo when I played over at my friend's house, and I was never able to activate the unbreak code for the AC unit. That night was especially unbearable, and I'd opened up all the windows in the house when I had gotten home from school that day, but nothing seemed to cool the trailer down. The award show went to a commercial break, and I hung my head out the open window, hoping a breeze would cool the sweat dripping down my forehead. The TV was louder than it needed to be in order to combat the noise of traffic outside. I also thought that I was home alone because I hadn't seen my mom all day. Her not being there was nothing new. I'd been essentially raising myself since I could dress myself. So when I pulled my head back in, and I saw her standing just out of the TV's light, back by her bedroom door, I was initially startled. But then she spoke to me, and she sounded just like she did when she was sober. It was a cadence that I couldn't pin down how or why it rang differently at first, but it had the ability to transport my 10-year-old self to 4 years prior. I didn't know I'd forgotten the way her soft, natural voice sounded until I heard it again. I turned down the TV with the remote as she said, "Claire Bear, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. I love you." Then she asked me if I could give 999 a bell for her. The phone was on a black ottoman we used as a coffee table. I grabbed it and started dialing. I hadn't thought to ask why I was calling until there was an operator on the other line asking me the same question. I turned back to see that my mom's no longer standing there. So, in a stammer, I tell them, "I don't know. My mom asked me to call, but she went back into the bedroom." They asked if she was hurt. Truthfully, I hadn't gotten the best look at her. The bright screen of the TV took away any potential for my eyes to adjust to seeing in the dark. But I said no because she sounded fine. They asked if anyone else was there. I tell them, "I don't know. I didn't think that my mom was even here until a couple of seconds ago." I give them my name, my mom's name, and our address. Instead of disconnecting, the operator asks to stay on the line with me until emergency services arrive. Then I'm asked if I can enter the bedroom where my mom was to give her the phone. I got up from the couch and walked over to her room, but when I tried to go in, the handle would turn but the door wouldn't budge. It was like something heavy on the other side had prevented me from entering. So I started knocking and calling out, "Mom, 999's on the phone and they need to talk to you." After a minute, I stopped knocking and pressed my ear against the wood of the door. I wanted to listen for any indication of what was going on in there. It was cold against my cheek, and the chill felt nice against my skin. My mom was singing in a whisper, like lullabies sung to a baby. For the life of me, I wouldn't be able to remember the specific tune, but I used to love when she'd sing around the house. It was barely audible, but when I heard it, I started pounding on that door again. When I stopped to listen again, the singing had stopped, but there weren't any other sounds of movement, and the door stayed unbudging with my efforts. I went back to sit on the couch, but had to hop back up again because the medics had just shown up. When I opened the door to the trailer to let them in, I made eye contact with a neighbor standing outside, an old nom-vet whose name I can't remember, but the colorful ambulance lights had alerted everyone in the park, and they'd come out of their homes to be nosy. 2 medics ran in. They looked like kids. I'm not sure what age you have to be to work as a paramedic, but the guys that rushed in, they looked like they were still in high school. The bedroom was a skip from where they came in, and when they got to the bedroom, I expected these kids to struggle with the door, but it opened right away for them. Before I could start to walk toward the door, a 3rd medic had come inside just in time to stop me from following them into the bedroom. They grabbed a blanket from the couch, and I was led outside. The paramedic with me was older than the other 2. His glasses hung low on his nose, and he slightly resembled the librarian that worked at my school. He was sweet, even made me laugh once, but despite his best efforts to distract me from what was going on, I knew when the paramedics rolled a stretcher past us, they'd covered her with a sheet like the movies. I knew exactly what I was looking at, but it didn't seem real. It couldn't have been my mom. She was just singing minutes ago. She was the one that told me to call. I ran into the trailer and into the bedroom before I could be stopped again, though I wish I had been. I wish that sweet old man would have grabbed my arm one more time, but I moved too quick. He caught up with me, but not before I saw my mom's blood splattered on the walls and carpet. Her room was torn apart like a struggle had happened. The mirror on her vanity was shattered. Drawers and clothes were thrown everywhere. There was a large dark pool of blood that soaked into the fabric of the white comforter on the bed. The plastic blinds above her window were torn down, and the window itself was pushed fully open. That's where they believe her attacker entered and exited from. The autopsy report said that along with multiple blunt force traumas that she'd experienced, she'd also been shot. It was presumed that she died earlier that day, most likely while I was at school. And to this day, her killer was never caught. The case went cold and has never been followed up on. My sister saw something years ago that still haunts her to this day. She doesn't like talking about it, and when she does, it takes a lot out of her. I've only heard the full story once, and even then she had to stop a few times to collect herself. At the time, she was living in Kansas with her now ex-husband, who was active military. I'm not sure the exact town, but it was somewhere near the base. Things were rough for her back then. Emotionally, mentally. Her husband was abusive, and she'd started taking late-night drives just to get out of the house and breathe. There was a small park that she liked to go to. Nothing fancy, some trees, a little playground, one way in and out across an old covered bridge. She'd go late at night, sometimes bringing a blanket and a candle just to sit on the grass, listen to music, and just exist in silence. She told me this happened on one of those nights. She was laying on her back, staring up at the sky, music in her ears, candle flickering beside her. On one side, woods, on the other side, the parking lot and the playground. She said it was so quiet that night she could hear the wind shifting through the grass. And then out of nowhere, a voice in her head said, "Get up, now." She sat up. Every hair on her body stood on end. She looked around. Nothing. No cars, no footsteps. Just the same quiet park she'd been coming to for weeks. At first, anyway. She scanned left to right and then looked back to her left again. And that's when she saw movement at the tree line. At first, she figured it was a deer or maybe someone out walking their dog. But the longer she stared, the more she realized it was standing upright, slender, too tall. She couldn't see the details at first, but it had this strange gait, like it was gliding across the grass in long, unnatural strides. Still, she didn't panic. Not yet. She just gathered her things, trying to convince herself it was just a person. But when she looked up, the figure had crossed more distance than was natural or possible. It was still far off, but something about the way it moved didn't sit right with her. That's when she noticed how long its limbs were, how unnatural the movement had become, and how quiet it was, despite now being close enough that she should have heard shoes, gravel, something. She stood up and started walking quickly towards her car. She couldn't run. She said something in her gut told her not to run. It felt like if she did, it would give it permission to chase. She said the worst part was walking diagonally toward the car while knowing this thing was closing in. Every few steps she could hear it now. Soft, crunching footsteps behind her, measured but fast. She didn't dare turn around. When she reached her car and yanked open the door, she finally saw it under the parking lot lights. It was just standing there, too tall, skin pale like bone, no hair anywhere. Its arms hung incredibly low, and its legs, they moved in a way that she couldn't even explain, like It was bent in all the wrong places. She never got a good look at its face. She said that she couldn't. It was too close to her headlights, too tall for her line of sight from inside the car. She reversed so fast she nearly backed into the playground fence, then peeled out toward the bridge. She didn't look back until she hit the far side of the bridge and knew she was putting distance behind her. When she finally did glance in the mirror, it was still standing in the same spot. It hadn't followed. It hadn't moved. It just watched. She never went back to that park. For years afterward, she was afraid to be outside alone at night, even in residential neighborhoods. She told me she still gets flashes of that moment far too often, especially when walking the dog or sitting in a car alone. And she kept that story to herself for a long time, didn't think anyone would believe her. But since then, I've seen more stories pop up, people describing things that sound eerily similar. It makes me wonder just how many people out there have seen something like it and kept quiet. She swears it wasn't human. She swears it wasn't anything that belonged above ground, and I believe her. I wasn't there, but I could still see the way her hands trembled when she told me the story, the way her voice shook, and sometimes late at night when I'm alone outside, I think of it too. And I hope if it ever does happen to me, I'm close enough to safety to run. What made you quit your most recent job? This was such an oddball question, a real scroll slower, probably because it related to my situation so incredibly I couldn't move on. When I read it, I knew my answer right away, and well, here we are. Morning, friends, I'm Addie. I've always been an early bird and I appreciate structure and routine. Speaking with therapists, I have a lot of abandonment issues that have led me to treat relationships and jobs like an oath in blood. I've cut people off that probably didn't deserve it while keeping people close that were toxic from the start. It's the same for my employment history too, sort of. I've never had a meltdown at my place of work, but I have stayed in positions that made me want to ride the elevator to the top floor and jump from the roof. And yet, every morning I'd get up, get dressed, and go there, simply because I hated change. I hate feeling like the now will soon be something else. There's a story about King Solomon and his search for a ring, one that when he wore it and gazed upon it, if he was happy, the sight of it would make him sad. But when he feels the weight of the world on his shoulders and the sun forgets to rise, the ring will fill him with joy once again. He offered 1 bag of gold for the one who could obtain such a ring and bring it to him. It seemed as though he'd given an impossible task to anyone who volunteered. Over the days, he was brought rings from all around, most of them adorned with expensive jewels and rubies. Some changed colors depending on the amount of light it was given. All of them were rejected by the king. Seeing all these beautiful rings being tossed aside led one of his followers to think about the obscure request in a different way. And when he did, he knew exactly what to do. He went out and purchased a cheap wooden ring from a small shop in town. Then he went down a couple of doors and had it engraved. And when he presented this ring to King Solomon, the inflated smile he wore slowly melted into a frown. And with that, he told one of his guards to fetch the peasant his reward. What was engraved on the ring that the king was so moved by would later be revealed to say, "This too shall pass." I thought about this a lot in my job, like a reminder. Both good and bad times are temporary. It served as a source of comfort and perspective for me during difficult periods. So back to the question, what made you quit your most recent job? The funny thing is, I did that today. I felt so much guilt. I work at a preschool for the deaf. The staff there is composed of a few deaf teachers and a few hearing, all fluent in ASL. It's not a big facility, and because of the special needs of the students, it's difficult finding qualified candidates. We're constantly low-staffed and filling in for each other. It gets wearing on the spirit knowing that you're only waking up and getting dressed because you're obligated to your own personal work ethic. And that's the thing. My coworkers bust their asses off just like I do. It takes all of us to open the doors every morning. Not physically, but you get what I'm saying, I hope. I feel terrible leaving the team, and I can say that I really did like everyone I worked with, and the pay was really good, almost double my last job. But this school is so fucking haunted, and I'm so fucking sick of feeling scared when I'm alone making lesson plans. Things are always falling off of shelves, cabinets are always open when I swear I just closed them. Try blaming that on a kid when they're out at recess. You can't, and then you get real shivery and try everything in your power not to hop on your bike and ride home. Not too. This place was biking distance from my house. It was literally my dream job, but I couldn't do it anymore. Sometimes the kids would notice the toys moving on their own. That was a regular occurrence. This Toy Story dinosaur in particular kept turning its head to look at us while we were having circle time. When we'd have our cleanup song and put everything away at the end of the day, I'd take the kids to their parents' pickup. And when I'd go back to the classroom, that one T-Rex would always manage to find its way back to the middle of the carpet. None of the other teachers seem to have things happen, or at least they're not admitting it. Maybe it's just my classroom. This is or would have been my second year teaching there. The first year, I didn't experience any activity. Over the summer, they did a lot of construction from the grant, and the old building that's been around since 1970 got a whole new renovation. Returning this year, we had a chance to get our classrooms ready before the kids came in the following week. When I walked into my room and saw the touch screen and everything, all new countertops, sinks, cubbies, all of it, it was insane, all the technology upgrades they expected us to learn and get down in a week, but it was exciting. And then we had one more staff meeting in the cafeteria the night before the first day of school. It goes a little late with all the questions that we had about how to use the new equipment, and by the time the meeting adjourns, it's dark out. Before the meeting, I'd accidentally left my laptop plugged into the charger in my classroom, and I needed to go back and get it. The buildings are laid out in an L shape. The cafeteria is located at the center of the L, and my classroom is at the top, opposite the front doors. The double doors at the end of my hallway lead to the playground. With it being after hours, most of the hallway lights were off, and all the classroom lights were off except mine. I remembered turning them off before I'd left for the meeting, but I was also walking back to grab a laptop I'd forgotten. I could have easily bobble-brained the lights as well. Who knows, right? But as I got closer to the room, the lights turned off. I must have been preoccupied with what I was going to do after I left the school because I didn't think of it past. That was weird. Before the next thought pushed the anomaly out. As I walked through the doorway, I flipped on the lights and headed toward where my laptop was plugged in. But before I got there, I heard the sink turn on in our hand washing station. The new sinks are motion censored, and I was pretty sure I couldn't set it off from that far away, but it's possible. When I get to my desk, I have to climb under to unplug the laptop from the power strip. While I'm under my desk, I hear the sink turn on again. This time, I know there's no way I could have done it, and my heart starts to beat a little faster. I look up from the desk at a sleek rectangular faucet as it continues to spit water. That side of the room was darker, and when the sink turned off, I saw the red sensor on the bottom of the faucet and realized whether the sink was going or not, that red light should have still been visible. So what I had just watched was something unblock the sensor. I got chills and quickly exited that evening. The new school year begins, and throughout these past 4 months, the little stuff with the toys and the cabinets started happening. It felt like the energy had soured in my classroom. I dreaded waking up to go to that place every day. Sometimes I'd be sitting at my desk and suddenly feel an overwhelming wave of sadness for no reason. I became depressed. I've been depressed. It's been like something has been feeding off my normally bright and positive energy since the school year started. But I couldn't abandon my team, so I continued to go. But last night tipped me over the edge, and nothing could have gotten me to go back. It's conference week, and thankfully this was the last family I was scheduled to meet with. Both parents are hard of hearing and didn't hear the toys and books falling on the floor behind them. But I could see it all. I knew something was going to happen when they left. I anticipated it. I couldn't tell if the family felt anything, but the energy felt heavy when we all walked in, like walking into a sauna. The air was thick, but not by water molecules. As the meeting wrapped up, I tried to stall the family as long as I could so I wouldn't have to be alone, but they eventually did leave. I walked them to the front doors and locked them when they were out. I thought about following them out and hopping on my bike as well, but I knew I couldn't. I was the last one there and I needed to lock everything up before I left. Up to that point, I wasn't planning on quitting. My goal was to get in, get out, but that couldn't be further from what happened. When I got back into the classroom, I hurried to pick up the toys that fell, and of course, the T-Rex was laying furthest away from the other toys. I felt it move in my hands when I picked it up. It was such a disturbing sensation, I reactively threw it away from me, and the plastic leg broke. I should have thrown it away long ago, but now it actually had a legitimate reason to meet the trash bin. Not wanting to touch it again, I laid the bin on its side and gave the dinosaur a kick in. Right after doing that, my classroom door slammed incredibly loud. You know how heavy those school doors are. It shook the walls and scared me enough to lose my balance. The shock of it put me on my ass and got me so mad, almost as mad as I was scared. But when I got to my feet, I didn't have time to fixate on the door because the rocking chair I keep in our library area began rocking back and forth. Every interval, its speed increased until it fell forward with another loud crash. And that's when I said, fuck it. That mix of anger and fear was now just fear. Whatever this was enjoyed fucking with me, and I was all done. So I quit. Do I feel guilty? Absolutely. But do I feel better? 100%. Sometimes the toxic work environment is supernatural. But either way, don't stay at a place that makes you feel awful, regardless the reason. Life is too short, and then we're just a ghost haunting a school. So live your best one. Well, friends, it appears we've reached the end of tonight's episode. Thanks for joining me, whether it's your first time or you're a regular. Your support means the world over here. We've got brand new episodes every Friday night, and keep those eyes open for those deep sleep videos. And of course, subscribe, tap the bell, and you'll never miss a thing. Special thanks to the Darkest Hour channel members, Lori TESDAHL, Sarah Marie, Robert Bailey, T COLTDADDY Eagle, Mallory Dominguez, KARI Watkins, PILAR TREDEN WIXSON, Larry Hill, Ripley, JOJO STARCHER, Mary Patrick, Debbie LAFRENIERE, Julie Bourdelais, Jennifer BECK, and Marina LACHNER. Big thanks to those who shared their stories, and a huge shout out to all of our patrons: Tracy S, Mary H, Tanya F, Tamara K, Monica L, ZoeWatt, Chelle B, Donald C, Marion T, Rat Girl, Alicia S, Aaron G, Nikki H, Mr. Revenant, Naz K, Brendan G, Paul T, Nicholas C, Tony P, Lizanne, Arlene F, Adrian, TF Parham, Jason G, Lori T, and Bobo Jenkins. If you want to support the Darkest Hour in other ways, consider joining our Patreon or check out the link in the description to learn more. Do you have stories like these? I'd love to share them. Send them to me, Amanda, darkesthour@gmail.com, or on the Darkest Hour subreddit, The Darkest Hour YT. Stay spooky.